to speak on today's theme, we are absolutely happy to invite Dr. AnnMaria Rousey is a serial entrepreneur, professor, and as she has previously mentioned, the first American to win the Judo World Championships, which is so cool. She is president of 7 Generation Games, a tech startup she co-founded. Dr. Demars earned her doctorate from the University of California, Riverside. Prior to her tech career second act, I love that, that's so great, she was a professor at Minot State University, Jamestown College, which is now the University of Jamestown, and the Kankdeska Chicana. Thank you so much. Community college, teaching courses in business, psychology, education, and statistics. She was one of Forbes' 40 Women to Watch Over 40, an AARP Purpose Prize Fellow, and the first woman to serve as president of a national judo organization. She was appointed by Governor Gavin Newsom to be on the California State Athletic Commission. She has also authored a book on mat work techniques for judo and MMA fighters, published by Black Belt Magazine, and numerous scientific articles in academic journals on topics ranging from factor analysis to needs of rural educators in schools serving indigenous students. She has 4 children and 9 grandchildren. But most importantly, she is here with us today. So please, let's give a round of applause for Dr. Demars as she comes and shares her talk today.
Back up on stage.
Aha. So I spoke at TEDx Fargo this week, and there was a lot of things that I didn't have time to say. So you get to hear the rest of the story. Some of you are old enough to know what that means. Okay. There really was a secret World Champions meeting. And that's kind of cool, but I do have other world champions in my Rolodex. We don't have Rolodexes anymore. They're in my contacts on my phone. And just so you know, this guy here, Ricky Lindell, was a 2-time submission grappling world champion, also the lightest person to win the absolute division by a good 20 pounds. That's my daughter, Rhonda, who is UFC champion, WWE, don't tell anybody if it's fake. Also, junior world champion, and Ryan, also called Babyface Benoit, who is in the UFC. So we all got together and we talked about what it takes to be unreasonably successful. And at TEDx, I said 3 words: arrogance, humility, perseverance. But there's actually a 4th word I didn't have time to talk about, and that is selfishness. Now, my resume is impressive. I've, as they said, published articles in academic journals, a book on martial arts, 4 amazing daughters, founded multiple companies, won a world championships, 4 degrees. My coach says it's not bragging, if you can back it up. But day to day, it's Thursday, and I'm trying to get an AI application to work, and I am telling my grandchild that you will not learn to swim just by diving into deep into the pool, because one can take arrogance too far. So I'm grateful to be in Fargo, where I was forced to reflect on this. And I'm grateful to my daughter, Rhonda, because I originally was going to talk at TEDx about what it takes to be better, because everybody in the world could be better. Exactly, she said. Don't talk about that. Everyone can be better. Tell people something only you can say. 1,000 people could give that talk. Tell people what it takes to be the best in the world. And it takes an odd combination of arrogance and humility, because there's going to be a lot of late nights. My children always joke about, if I ever write my autobiography, the title should be "I Was Out of Town at the Time," because this is me one of many, many nights working in a hotel room before going to a pitch competition, working on writing the code. And in that long, long haul, there's going to be some real heartbreaking failures. That match you didn't win, that investor that refused to invest. And there's going to be some people along the way, some of whom mean well, telling you that you're crazy. When I was on the world team, they hired a sports psychologist to come in and talk to us, and she asked everybody, what's your goal? And everyone else said things like, well, I don't want to win necessarily, but I want to make my coach proud. I want to show good technique. And it was my turn. I stood up and I said, I want to be best on the planet on November 11th. And one of my teammates yelled at, she's so conceited. What makes you think you can win when no one else has ever won? And I said, somebody's got to be the first. Why not me? And on the one hand, that is logical, and on the other hand, it's insane, right? I mean, it really is kind of crazy to think I can be better than everybody on the planet. while working full-time as an engineer, by the way, single parent to a toddler, my daughter Maria helping me work out, in Judo, of all things, where we don't have a national training center, we don't have a real athlete development program, or funds, or really anything. And by the way, my knee was injured so badly that I couldn't do half the techniques in Judo, and if the Olympic Committee had known, they would not have medically cleared me to compete. It's a whole nother story about how I slid by that. So how do you get that level of arrogance? Well, Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. I said, winning is a habit. And I was actually advantaged because my mother had no money. She couldn't have flown me to Europe anymore, and she could have flown me to the moon. So I just competed in the local area, someplace like Fargo. I started a YMCA. I was the toughest 14-year-old green belt around, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And when I got good enough, I went to the state, and I won that. And because I won that, they sent me to the nationals. And I got funded. That was the first time I ever ate in a restaurant. I was 15 years old, and the state of Illinois Judo Association paid my way, and so I had money to actually go eat. I had no idea how to act or anything. But that's the story I will get to that I did not get to talk about at TEDx. So then I went to the nationals. I got a bronze medal my first time out, lost one match, about which I'm still mad. And then I was winning the nationals regularly. I got funded Europe, and only once did I come home to the U.S. empty-handed. I got a 5th place at the Tornado Olympics, and I am still mad about that too. And it's not that I never lost, as the bronze medal in 5th place can tell you, but I expected to win because that's what I did. When my daughter made her first world team, I told her, no one has the right to beat you. Now think about it. All those other people on my team are like, I don't want to win necessarily. And I said, you go out there and you expect to win. Now that same level of arrogance or insanity came into play when I decided at 55 to found an educational game company. And if you imagine what a tech founder looks like, somebody's grandma probably is not the first image that comes to mind. And investors couldn't imagine either. I'm not going to repeat what I told them about what I told some investors. But anyway, I went out and raised millions of dollars in federal research grants and contracted development and Kickstarter because I was going to do it. But at the same time, you need humility. You need the willingness to learn to, oh my gosh, one thing that will give you humility is working with middle school kids. Because if your game is boring, they will tell you. I make everybody in our company, you can't work for us for more than a year without going into a school. And we do a lot of games based on indigenous history and culture, so a lot of times you have to go to a school and a reservation. And you know what? One of our developers once, he came up to some little kid up at Turtle Mountain near here, and she says to him, did you design this game, Fish Lake? And did you make this game? And he's all proud. And he says, yeah, I did. And she starts poking him. This game was so hard. I died 15 times trying to get through those snakes. What makes you think this game was fun? This game was the opposite of fun. I'm like, I told you there were too damn many snakes in that game. But when I was competing, after I won the Worlds, the USA Judo Director of Development said he watched every tape of mine he could find. And he said, I saw you win a lot, and I saw you lose, but I never saw you lose the same way twice. And that's true, because I hated losing so much that anytime I lost, I watched those tapes over and over and over, trying to figure out what I did wrong. And if you think everyone does that, if I had $1 for every excuse I heard, oh, the referee cheated me or whatever, I would not be here because I would be on my private island. I guess private islands have a bad rep these days. But I would be on my private island in my giant pile of money doing this in a Zoom call. You need humility for two things. You need to admit you failed, and you need to change. And neither part of that is easy. My company, 7th Generation Games, has pivoted 3 times, from selling to consumers, to selling to schools, to customized game development, to now building an AI-integrated game development platform that will make making an educational game as easy as writing a blog. Going to our investors and saying, we're not making enough money in this market, so we've decided to make even less money next year while we retool for a new product, is not one of my happier memories. Probably not for the investors either. But if you don't admit you're failing, you can't change to get better. James Watson of Double Helix fame said, never be the smartest person in the room. The people I've seen who get really, really good, but not the best, reach a point where they think no one can teach them anything. I'm an Olympian. I've got this. And then there's Bob. Bob is amazing. Bob has raised millions of dollars. Bob's an elite athlete. You should be grateful to work with Bob. And he will learn from people as long as they tell him often enough how great he is and cater to his schedule. But the thing is, unfortunately for you Bobs, the mentors and employees and coaches you need often aren't grateful to be working with you because they might be the smartest person in the room. And maybe they're not able to drop everything and be around your schedule because they have demands on their time. Or maybe it's because they're a jerk. But you know what? Who cares? If you invent a new programming language or a better armbar, I want to learn it from you. Tell everybody in the world, AnnMaria founded multiple companies and is a gold medalist. You need to learn it from me. Go for it. Then you need perseverance. Now, everybody agrees with this one, but I want you to think about it. If you're not training every day, I've told this to athletes 1,000 times, if you're not training every day, somewhere out there, someone is. Maybe not today, and maybe not next month, but they will beat you. Also, you need to persevere at the right things. My statistics textbook, in my spare time that I don't have, I teach biostatistics and epidemiology. The statistics textbook has this target wherever all the arrows miss, and it says, consistency is only a virtue if you're not a screw-up. So you need the humility to constantly look at what you're doing and making sure that you're persevering at the right things. You need to persevere at getting better and getting smarter. Now, another thing I've noticed about the people who get really good but don't quite make it as the best is they want the perfect conditions. That I'm great, I'm only going to go 100% if I have other Olympians to train with. I need more staff to support me so I could spend all of my time coding. But on my planet, Earth, where we don't have unicorns run down rainbows and deliver cupcakes with our coffee, it doesn't work like that. Some days, you train with the 40-year-old accountant who showed up after work and is kind enough to do throwing drills with you. Or you did your business taxes today, and it's 9 p.m., and you were reading a paper on large language models while you were holding a sleeping 3-month-old. That is legal. My granddaughter, by the way. The people who don't quite make it are the ones who only put out 100% effort on those days when all the conditions are good, when the stars align. But selfishness, this was something I didn't have a chance to talk about at TEDx. Everybody says, oh, yeah, you need to train every day. But guess what? If you're going to be the best, every decision you make has to be directed toward that goal. You open your eyes in the morning and you think, how can I get this program to work? How can I beat that person? How can I get better? And this is also why I hate Disney shows, because my children will tell you I yell at the TV. You watch those shows and there's the kid who's the bully and they're bullying the hero of the show, and then you see that bully score the winning goal in the soccer finals and their mom is on the phone making some big corporate deal or with their corporate law firm, and I'll be yelling, see, you know why that kid can afford to go to that damn expensive soccer camp? Because that mom has that job. My kids will be like, chill, Mom, it's just a show. But perseverance means sacrifice, and not just from you all like, oh yeah, you need to train every day. But that means when it's your kid's preschool graduation, you're not there. When it's when your kid is competing in the state finals for track, you're not there. My children always tell me my autobiography should be entitled, I was out of town at the time. Yeah, there was that time Maria tore her ACL in a state track meet. Of course, I was out of town at the time, but so when I'm working on 7th-generation games, our company's 7th-generation blocks is the new thing that we're making, and there are so many times when I tell my kids, I have to go. I'm speaking in San Diego. We were one of 12 companies picked to pitch in front of 6,000 people. Unless one of my kids needs a kidney or to be broke out of jail in Tijuana, I will be presenting. And it means that you do have to be selfish. What about talent? At the World Championships, everybody's got talent. No one's out of shape. It's a necessary but not sufficient condition for success. If you think about it for even 30 seconds, I'll bet you can think of someone you know in your life who is a talented failure. They could have been good, but they didn't have those other things. Luck. It does matter, and if you think it doesn't, you're deluding yourself. If I had been born in a different time or a different place where women didn't have the opportunity to get an education or compete, I wouldn't be in front of you right now. Title IX passed while I was in college. If I had been born 5 years earlier, I wouldn't be here. So you need humility to realize that the world is full of people who worked as hard as you, sacrificed as much as you, are as talented as you, and because of luck, they got injured at just the wrong time. They were born in a country without access to venture capital, or 1,000 other reasons. They didn't make it. You know, I opened an office in Chile as part of Startup Chile, and there were people from a lot of countries there who had just as good ideas as me and worked just as hard as me, but their countries just don't have the capital to back their ideas. You need honesty to face up the possibility. That could be you. That person who doesn't make it could be you. And you need the courage, maybe arrogance, to persevere in taking your shot every single day, regardless. However, and this is what we also talked about at the World Champions meet, because there really was one. We all got together and like, oh, we should tell people this. If all you do, you take all those skills and that talent and that training, and you don't figure out how to apply that to make the world a better place, then you're just a waste of talent. When I started winning everything in sight, my grandmother said to me, every talent you have is a gift from God. And you need to show it wasn't a mistake to give it to you instead of the kid next door. Being best is a waste of talent if the only person it benefits is you. Now, when I finished that at TEDx, it took a great while to figure that I was done and come up on stage. And the reason is because I wasn't done. I was just out of time, right? I mean, so here is the rest of these stories. I very rarely talk about this for a reason, okay? I was not voted likely to succeed in my school by anybody, except maybe 50% my history teacher who said, I'm going to see your name in the paper someday. It's either going to be for owning the bank or robbing the bank. No, he did. But every negative thing you could think of, if any of you have ever taught, the worst kid you had in your class, I could probably beat. I probably did beat him up if I was in school. And I don't talk about it because I think people often use stories like mine as an excuse not to help kids. Well, look at her, she's resilient. No, I was in an alternative school for bad kids because I was a bad kid, and I did a study when I was in grad school on by 10% of the kids from my school were dead. I left home at 15 for good. And it's kind of like when people say, why did you do that? It's kind of like when I asked my youngest daughter about her friend that got cut from the college soccer team, and I said, why did that happen? She said, it wasn't because she was good. So, yeah, I left home at 15. I was in and out of juvenile hall. I was in foster care. And how did I end up here? Well, when I was 12, my mom managed to pull together enough money for us to get a YMCA membership. And I went down to the Y, and she pushed me out of the car and said, go join something. And Title IX hadn't passed, so there were 3 choices. You could do swimming with your short, fat little girl. You don't want to be swimming. And you could do track, which if you're a short, fat little girl, you run very fast. And there was judo. And I could fight, man. I mean, I came from the hood. And I had 3 brothers, so I did that. I was built like a little dorm room refrigerator, so it was hard to pick up and hard to get under. But when a lot of my friends ended up in jail for knocking over a liquor store or assaulting a police officer or breaking into a building, I was at practice. I wasn't a better kid than them. I wasn't a smarter kid than them. I was at practice because some guy who had gone to Japan in the Air Force and come back and was going to college on the GI Bill taught at the local YMCA Judo and decided to let girls join because his sister wanted to do it. So that changed the trajectory. I have a slide here somewhere. And here's two quotes that had a lot to do with the rest of my life. This comes from a very forgettable novel, so forgettable I forgot the name, but that she said, where your world talent meets the world's greatest pain is the place you are meant to occupy in the universe. Where does your greatest talent meet the world's greatest pain? And you might think that that would be judo, but I'm really good at math. And that's where I've spent, I did teach judo for 51 years. But the other thing was, this was for, I saw a poster in a school that says, forget your dreams, kid, follow math. So it should be where your greatest talent meets the world's greatest pain. So my first change in trajectory, there was that guy teaching his local Y, and instead of being out on the street or breaking into buildings, I was in the gym. And then there was my math teacher. I was sick. I missed school for chicken pox or something like that, and she let me stay after school, partly because I didn't want to go home, and partly to get caught up in math, and so that made me a little better in math. And then there was my 8th grade algebra teacher, because that 6th grade teacher had helped me. I was better in math, and I got into advanced placement algebra, which I stood out like pepper in the salt shaker, let me tell you, with all the good little kids. But I got better in math. And then when I got expelled from school for threatening to beat up the vice principal, who had it coming, well, I will tell you, I was, back in my day, if you acted up, they could give you swats, right? And I told them, if you hit me, I'm hitting you back, which I think is fair. And they said, you can come back when you're willing to take your swats. And I'm 66 years old, and I'm still not willing. So I got kicked out of there, went to an alternative school where my calculus teacher, we were his alternative service for Vietnam. He was a conscientious objector, and there were days he thought probably the jungle would be better. But so that's another. I had a calculus teacher, in the inner city, which is not a normal thing. And then my science teacher, who was doing her postdoc, but out of the goodness of her heart, came and volunteered a little bit and taught at our school, researched that there was a National Science Foundation program in Iowa. And I could go there. And since I was living on my own at 15 with a fake ID in an apartment in the crummiest part of town at a job that they didn't ask for ID too much, right? Or they didn't look too close. And if you want to, wash dishes at an all-night restaurant, they don't really care. So, hey, that was a better deal than doing that. I could go live on this college campus, get 3 meals a day for free. I'd never seen a cow before. Honest to God, I walked across the first day and was looking at these cows because I'd never seen a cow close up, which was my roommate who was from Wisconsin Dairy Farm, thought it was hysterical. I hitchhiked from St. Louis to Iowa, much to the outrage of the college faculty, but still, it moved me up a little bit more. And then I took the PSATs and killed on them because I had all that support. But here's the funny thing. None of those people did a huge amount. They didn't drive me to the campus in Iowa. They didn't move me into their house out of foster care. They didn't pay my tuition. And a lot of you are probably doing that right now. It's a really funny, true story. My very first judo coach, he taught when he was in college. He graduated, he went off, he got a job somewhere, and he just tracked me down recently. And he said, I always wondered what happened to you. See, a funny thing. Yeah, I won the world championships. So. Now, when I said about where your world's greatest talent meets the world's greatest pain, what made a big difference for me is I was good at math. And because I was good at math, I got into college. And because my daughter, Jen, teaches in Los Angeles. She taught for 7 years on 6th and Union. Now, I know you're all not from there, but this is the heart of the hood. Right? It's one of those schools when you tell people where she teaches, like, she teaches there? And that was her first choice. And she said, Mom, a lot of kids in my class, their story starts out like yours, right? Like, they're living with a grandparent, they've been in and out of foster care, they've had contact with the juvenile justice system, they really don't have any money, and it doesn't always end with, and then she got a PhD and founded multiple companies and won a world championships and lives by the beach in Santa Monica. I said, yeah, but sometimes it does. And for me, people laugh when I say this, but it's the God's truth. If it wasn't for two things, judo and math, I would be in Chino Women's Prison right now. So what about math? That's a thing that first of all, I'm good at it, right? So that's a place maybe I should focus my efforts. And I've seen so many, I taught at Chant Jessica Chicana, and not just there, but a number of other places, Minot State, Jamestown. Students come in and they want to be an architect, they want to be a physician, they want to be an engineer, and they find out that they're 3 or 4 years below college level in math. They've been passed all the way up. They're below, and they change their mind. They could be a major in communications or social work, which if you want to be a social worker, cool, go with God. But if you wanted to be an engineer and you gave up on your dream, I think that's tragic. I also see a lot of kids that they don't get division or they don't get fractions. If you don't understand fractions, you're not going to get percentages. You're not going to get decimals. Math is hierarchical, right? It's not like history. If you didn't quite get the Civil War, you can still understand about World War II. So then those kids get into high school and they don't get it because they're missing that foundation. And they decide, I don't have a math brain, math sucks, school sucks. The second I can get out of here, I quit. And if I could just change that trajectory, so when they're in elementary school, middle school, that they do get it. And then they get into high school, and they're like, well, math is hard, but it's not too hard. That's what Minnie Spotted Horse said about basic training, first Native American woman to be in the Marines. But anyway, math is hard. It's not too hard. I can do this. My mom really wants me to graduate, so I guess I'll graduate. Just change their trajectory. So that's what I'm doing now. I taught math for a while. I taught college for a while. We are making games. We got a grant from the Library of Congress to go out and talk to teachers in rural schools, schools serving indigenous students, and say, what could we make as a game that kids would play, and they could also learn math? And one gentleman from Oregon, who's a veteran, said to me, my kids, they learn anything about Native Americans in school. They learn, we were here 400 years ago, we had a thriving civilization. Now they hear anything, it's negative, it's about alcoholism or problems on the reservation. Where's the positive stories my kid could learn in school? So the first game we did was Warrior Vets. It was about Native Americans from World War I to the present who had won medals of honor and done amazing things. Minnie Spotted Horse, who was the first Native American woman in the Marines. Marcella LeBeau, who was a nurse. So just let me ask, do you even know who Joseph Medicine Crow is? See, you couldn't make this guy up. You should look him up, but I will give you very short. This guy decides that he's going to become a Crow war chief, which you need to lead a successful war party, disarm an enemy and take his weapon, touch a live enemy, steal an enemy's horses, and there's a fifth thing. Anyway, you should look up Joe Medicine Crow. So I'm walking through this is how it all started. I was at Spirit Lake with my friend Eric, and we're running, Dr. Eric Longy, first person from Spirit Lake to earn a doctorate, and we're walking through the school, and his grandson must have just failed a math test, because he says to him, Papa, I don't need math because I'm an Indian. And Eric looks down at me and says, my boy, we were a nomadic people. We roamed all over these plains. Do you think we met another tribe with, what a surprise, new Indians? No, because we knew how fast the average horse would go. And we knew how far away they were, so we knew when we were going to meet. So it's a time, rate, and distance problem. So that's what we did, is Eric was the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. What did I say about you? Your greatest talent. And I was a statistician. We put it together and we made games to teach math. So there's that. We also recently did a game called Science on the Lewis and Clark Trail. You all probably know this because you live in North Dakota, that Hidatsa used crop rotation 100 years before George Washington Carver. You maybe hadn't thought about math in the Lakota buffalo hunt, but it takes a lot to organize that many people. So so that's the latest thing we did. And what we're doing now is creating a platform that's going to make it as easy to make educational games as write a blog. So I am the outlier when it comes to World Judo Champions. Everybody else went and they opened a gym, they coached MMA fighters, and I decided I will get a PhD and I will make it easier for kids around the world to learn math. Because you probably ought to forget your dreams and follow math, because the probability, being a statistician, of you making a six-figure income if you're really good at math versus if you're really good at basketball is vastly different. So that's what I do in my day job, and that's what I am focused on now, is changing the trajectory. The question is, what do you do after you get to be best in the world at something? And the answer that we all came up with is, if you're a decent human being, you take those skills and you try to make the world a better place. And usually when I teach judo, I end with, and that's all I know about judo. But that's all I know about anything. So.
So, a very fun time. We appreciate you so much for being able to share that. So, we have time for probably like 2 questions.
Yeah.
So, if we have 2 questions, I normally have a question, but I will allot my time for anybody who has any questions who would like to ask. Oh, John.
So first of all, I have to say this is one of my favorite Creative Mornings, I think, of all time. First of all, I work with entrepreneurs, so I really resonate on the perseverance, the humility, and arrogance, because it takes all that, and then the sacrifice part too, because it's like startup life is cool, but it's crazy hard and not for everybody. But that's not what I want to ask a question about. When you talk about the trajectory, I think about that a lot too. Of the mentor part too, is that I think of like the words like agency and even like reciprocating. So the importance of there's reciprocating. So there's agency, like say creative that's doing things to change your trajectory. Like the group in Creative Mornings doing this event, they're having the agency to create this, but then everyone here is they're reciprocating on that by attending, taking that step, and not just going to the office or sitting on the couch. And by doing those, there's both ends that are helping change the trajectory of me or yours. And but the biggest part is so you've had a lot of those moments. I'm getting my point here. I'm glad you had that perspective. Did you kind of know you were seeing that then, or because you were taking advantage of these opportunities in that luck? Were you knowing this, or thinking, okay, I need to do this? And I know some of it you said you were just doing because you wanted to get out of your house, but it's kind of a question on that, and taking advantage and have the agency to reciprocate on these opportunities that are ahead of you, and maybe like how everybody can have those receptors out to take advantage, or to give something out to allow someone else's trajectory to change. That makes sense?
If your question is, did I understand when I was getting those advantages at mentoring? When I was younger, no. No, I mean, they say life is lived forward and understood backward, and certainly when I was 12, 15, 16, getting these opportunities, sometimes I was grateful, sometimes I wasn't. But as I got older, now when I talk to an investor, when I talk to a teacher, one of the things I ask at the end of it, even when I'm doing research, is there anything I can do for you? But I think that is maybe it's just me, or maybe it's everybody. It takes a certain amount of maturation to realize that it shouldn't just be all about you. And I think some people never get to that point.
Talk a bit about the trajectory, and you talked about the kid in middle school who might have missed the steps of the hierarchy of math. And you talked about when you see kids coming from the res and trying to go to college, and I've missed that step, and so then they kind of diminish what they want to do. What advice do you have for adults or parents, or even a kid coming from the res? How do you get that back, or what's the step to kind of not, and I don't mean to diminish being a social worker and teacher, obviously, but if they start out wanting to be an engineer, if they start out wanting to do that, and then they realize they've missed that step or haven't gotten that step, what advice do you have at that point then to kind of help them push forward, instead of okay, well, you missed that step, so now you kind of have to play down here and play on the B team instead of the A team?
One of the things that we have done involving culture, whether it's Native American culture in the U.S., whether it's Latino culture in Southern California, is bring to the fore the fact, because I tell you, middle school kids know if you are lying to them, and I think college students do too. Perseverance, in Spirit Like the Game, one of the things there's a lesson on perseverance, and Eric Lange actually narrates it, where he says, can you imagine when there's a buffalo hunt, one of the tribal members say, oh, this is too hard, buffalo are really big, I'm just going to sit here, bring me back some meat. You come from a history, a culture of people who did difficult things. So a little math class is not going to hold you back. So I think giving people that, and I think the other thing is because your kids are looking at you. A lot of people who are at tribal colleges are parents. Your children are looking at you. I've heard Eric give this talk to many students. If they say, oh, well, Dr. Lange, I won't finish for 5 years, or my GPA is this, he would say, so what? I've given out diplomas to hundreds of students on that stage, and not one of them said, but it took her 7 years to do it, or she only had a 2.7 GPA. So I would say, so what? You're going to do it anyway. If you are a single parent, you have done hard things. If you have given birth, let me tell you, I have 4 kids. You have done hard things. You have come here and overcome a lot of obstacles. This is just going to be, so I think changing the trajectory, changing the way they think of themselves as, I have failed at a lot of things, to you have overcome all of those things. The guy who was director of development for USA Judo, the same one who watched all my tapes, I was going on one time about something I had done that I thought was stupid when I was young, and he said to me, and look how far you've come. So that's my answer to them.
We have time for one? Yeah, we got time for one.
All right, so as mentioned, I had quite the week, and you were something that I was very eager to get out of bed for this morning, and I want to thank you for both of your talks. But you've talked a lot about, your trajectory, how you became the best, how you then pivoted to be okay, now what, right? And a lot of it has been very about profession and your passions, and I'm just curious, getting to raise 4 kids and then have grandkids and get to call them this week and talk to them, and throughout all of this time that you're having all these still successes, what was something that you did as a parent that maybe helped create that tie or bond, even though you couldn't always be there?
I think all of my children know that if I have to be there, I will. There was a young woman who was on the Olympic team, and she had an issue with something, and Rhonda said to her, if you really want this fixed, tell Mom, because she will knock down walls to make it happen. So I think they always had that confidence that even if I'm in Fargo now, even if I have to be in San Jose, they could call me from Austria at 3 a.m. and I would fix things. So I think there's that. And one of my kids said, one of the best things that I've ever heard somebody say about one of my kids, it was my youngest one, he said, Julia is strong but not mean. She will stand up for other kids at school that are being bullied. She's what we want our children to be. And I have always told my girls, no one has the right to beat you, not just in the sense of losing, but in the sense of kids that get abused. And anything that happens in your life, if you need me in your corner, I will be there. But a lot of parents say that, but like my partner, who's my business partner, Eric Lange, he said, there are people who will dive on a grenade in a foxhole for you that won't stand up for you at a business meeting. I've seen parents that their kid hates a sport. They don't like it, they're not good at it, but the parents keep them in it because, oh, well, what'll the other parents think? So I think that was the thing for my kids. I don't care what anybody thinks. What are you gonna do? Have me glared at by council of elders? So the fact that I'm always there in their corner and they know that makes a difference.
Let's give another round of applause for Dr. Morris. That was amazing. Thank you so much.